What's up, guys? It is Clay here. I have another Reddit story reading for you guys. If I sound a little bit sick, I apologize. My nose and my sinuses have been completely screwed, but nevertheless, let's go ahead and get started into the Reddit stories. All right, so this Reddit story, well, first let me preface this by saying I'm not reading from Am I the Asshole this time around. I'm actually reading from r/stories. And this one is titled Karen Didn't Want to Pay, so a Firefighter Lit Her Up. And this is classified as a platinum story on Reddit, so should be pretty good. I, 19 female, work at a small cafe with my mom. It's just a cozy place where people come for good coffee, warm food, and a bit of kindness. My mom is the greatest soul you'll ever meet. The kind of person who thanks you when you mistreat her or apologizes if you bump into her. Yeah, that kind. Yesterday, this woman, in parentheses it says a couple, walks in all designer bags, oversized sunglasses, and condescension. She orders a chicken salad, eats 90% of it, I'm not exaggerating, then calls my mom over with an attitude. With the most sour face imaginable, she went, "This food tastes like shit. Absolute garbage. I want to write a complaint." Here we have this thing. It's like an official complaint book business provided by law. My mom, visibly shaken, was trying to explain that she was sorry to hear that and offer her a refund, but the lady kept cutting her off and acting like a bitch and looking around like she wanted an audience, and that's when I stepped in. I said, "Ma'am, if you'd like to write a complaint, I'd gladly bring it to you, but I'm sure you're aware that first you'll need to pay your bill. That's the law." She blinked at me like I just kicked her chihuahua, and she said, and I quote, "You know who I am. I won't pay for this service, I can tell you that." And then entered the husband. He stood up, all puffed chest and testosterone, and started telling us we better watch ourselves. Don't know who you're messing with, and other cliches straight from entitled rich guy starter pack. My mom was frozen. I was trying to stay calm because at this point I almost shit myself, because this guy was flexing like he wanted to fight. And then, right before I shut myself up, the salvation. One of our regulars, Carlos, stood up. Carlos is a firefighter, drinks his coffee black, wears a calm face, and once carried an Indian golden retriever down 3 flights of stairs. The man's basically an action movie hero. He walks over slowly, steady, and goes, "Sir, your wife ate the entire plate. You insult a woman who cooks with love and gives out free soup to people who can't afford lunch. Now you're trying to intimidate them?" The husband mumbled something macho and Carlos didn't flinch. He leaned in a little and said, "Either you pay for the food, apologize, and leave, or I call the cops, unless you want to solve this the old school way." Guess what? They paid, and just the bill because Carlos made sure he left a tip too. And then Carlos looked at me and said, "Add a bottle of water to the bill. She clearly needed something to wash down all that bullshit." Mic drop. Thank you, Carlos. Oh man, Carlos, what a guy, dog. He literally stood up for these people. That's great. But man, you have to really be a horrible kind of person to like be rude to people in food service or anything like that, because these people are literally just trying to make a wage and like, live their lives and make some money. I get it if they're rude or whatever and you're not too pleased with the service, but there's no point in being rude back. Just get what you got from there and leave. Like, there's no reason to sit here and argue with these kind of people or try to get over on them. It's pointless, man, and it's just messed up. But shout out to Carlos, man. He seems like a real one. But yeah, let's get into this next story. My pool was occupied by sovereign citizens. When I left for Aruba, my backyard was mine, legally, spiritually, emotionally. The pool sparkled, the grass glowed, the fence line was empty. Life was calm, chlorinated peace. 7 days later, I came home to a fence. Not along the border, not at the edge, not a polite suggestion of a boundary. A full enclosure wrapped tight around my entire backyard. And inside that fence, my pool. It wasn't my fence. It belonged to the neighbors. The ones with the dog that barked like it's testifying against me. The one whose wind chime collection sounds like someone torturing scrap metal in a thunderstorm. The same neighbors who haven't spoken to me since the 4th of July, potato salad incident of 2022. When a disagreement about dill ended in silence, suspicion, and Cold War level stares across the property line. That was also the first time they claimed part of my pool deck. might be on their land. They didn't take just a corner. My entire backyard was behind their fence. The pool, the grass, the walkway, even the grill. My pool float was drifting behind enemy lines. From the moment I stepped inside, it felt like a hostage situation. The back door and sliding glass panels that once opened onto sun and sky now faced pressure-treated pine. No yard, no view, just the grim wooden face of a territorial insult. I walked to their front door and knocked. No answer. I rang the bell. Nothing. But inside, whispers, footsteps, the dog barking like it was covering fire. So I left a note. Hi, I think you may have accidentally enclosed my pool and backyard. Please call me. They didn't. The next morning, a no trespassing sign was zip tied to the gate. Their fence, around my yard. Day 3. Splashing, laughter. I peeked through the slats. They were in my pool, reclining, drinking. The husband waved from my patio chair like I was interrupting his vacation. I called the police. The responding officer looked skeptical until he saw it. He stood beside me, staring through the locked gate as the neighbors floated by, sipping canned cocktails like smug pirates. You're saying they fenced you out of your own pool? The cop said. I am, I said. He walked the property, took photos, knocked on their door. They emerged from the water with the relaxed entitlement of people who believe laws are for other people. This is our land now, the husband said, adjusting his towel like a Roman senator. Do you have proof of ownership? The officer asked. We don't need proof, the wife replied. We have presence, and we don't recognize corporate municipal claims. The officer turned to me. As absurd as this is, it's a civil matter. You'll need to take it to court. So, they can just throw a fence around my yard, swim in my pool, and it's fine? Unless you can provide criminal trespass with clear documentation, he said, already mentally filling out a registration letter. I'll file a report. The rest is up to the civil court. Day 4. I hired a lawyer. He didn't believe me. I told him to come over. He did. He saw. He swore. Then he said, you're going to need everything. Deed, survey, photos, tax records, the original contractor, your kindergartner diploma if you can find it. These people aren't confused. They're running on vibes and conspiracy. Day 5. The surveyor arrived, laughed out loud, drew a red line across a satellite photo. They took your whole backyard, he said. Not a corner, not an inch, all of it. We sent them a certified letter demanding removal. Their response? A court summons. They summoned me. They took my land, used my pool, sunned themselves on my furniture. And then they had the gall to drag me into court like I was the intruder. The sheer audacity. I wasn't just angry. I was incandescent. The kind of fury that peels the paint off siding. That they could be so shameless, so convinced of their own fantasy, and then treat me like a criminal. It was no longer about property lines. It was about principle. It was war. In court, they arrived with binders labeled land truce and private jurisdiction theory. Inside were crayon-colored maps, printed memes, printouts of a MySpace page, and something that looked suspiciously like a treasure map drawn on a napkin. There was also a page titled Founding Father Vibes, with a stock photo of George Washington giving a thumbs up. Their legal strategy appeared to involve vibes, patriotism, and what might have been an expired gift receipt to Chili's. They argued the land was ungoverned, that fences could be reestablished by occupancy, and that local law did not apply to backyard sanctuaries. They cited a document called the Backyard Magna Carta, which appeared to be laminated and written in Comic Sans. They judged raised an eyebrow. Do you have a permit for the fence, he asked. Permits are not required in spiritual zones, said the husband. What kind of zone is this? A sovereign domestic holding, the wife said, unfurling a scroll with the ribbon like she was about to knight herself. The judge gave a dry, unimpressed laugh, the kind that said he'd seen everything, from sovereign citizens to flat earthers, but this was his first laminated napkin constitution. Enough, he said, voice firm as steel. This isn't a Renaissance fair. It's a courtroom. You are not nobility. You are trespassers. He turned to his clerk. Please note for the record that both defendants have demonstrated willful disregard for property law, public codes, and basic shared realty. The husband tried to object. The judge silenced him with a single look. You built a fence around someone else's home. You swam in their pool. You drank on their patio. Then you marched into my courtroom armed with a crayon manifesto, a ribbon scroll, and the legal logic of a Scooby-Doo villain. He turned to me. I had it all. The deed, the survey, closing photos, utility maps, tax records, even the original contractor and previous homeowner who testified like a man wronged by the time himself. Every step. I had to prove the obvious, that what was clearly mine had always been mine. Being right wasn't enough. I had to be documented. Full removal of the fence, the judge ruled. Damages awarded, legal costs reimbursed. Then, looking back at them, contempt of court. Criminal trespass charges, orders of protection. If you so much as hang a wind chime in this man's direction again, I will see you back here in shackles. A week later, the fence was gone. Their grass exhaled. The pool sparkled, the sky returned, their neighbors retreated behind their curtain of chaos. I never got an apology, but I did get my pool float back. I kept it, and I named it Victory. Oh my god, that story is crazy. I mean, imagine coming home and your neighbors have just decided that your backyard, yeah man, no longer yours, mine now. And basically the only way to get them off of that land is to now spend more than likely thousands of dollars in court fees, lawyer fees, all kind of expenses that, you may or may not have the money to. If this person didn't have the money to go through court, that cop was not able to do anything because this is a civil matter. It's going to have to take to court. He can't legally tell them to get off because he cannot decide that. He's a police officer. He can't decide civil matters right then and there. He's not a judge, so that does suck. But hey, I mean, you got it figured out and you got everything paid for damages and whatnot, I guess. But yeah, let's get into the next story. This one is titled, I Was the Lunch Thief. They think it's the janitor or the intern, or maybe Steve with his protein powder moral superiority and microwave fish vendetta. But it's me. I am the lunch thief. Every office has one. A shadow fleeting between fridge shelves. A man whispered in irritated Slack threads. A ghost with barbecue sauce fingers. And for the past 6 months, a MacGuffin partners. I've been that ghost. It didn't start with malice. It started with hunger. You don't really understand the phrase cost of living until you're paying $2,300 for a studio the size of your mom's Tupperware drawer. After rent, student loans, and anxiety meds, my bank balance hovered at $41.17. For 2 weeks, I rationed ramen, half-crushed protein bars. Then, one Thursday, a brown paper bag, no name inside, a turkey sandwich with cranberry chutney, kettle chips, and a chocolate pudding. It wasn't stolen. It was rescued. I told myself, this is a one-time thing. A week later, I was facing down another ketchup packet tomato soup when it appeared again. Another unmarked bag. This time, Mediterranean chicken wrap, tzatziki, olives. I should have stopped, but I was hooked. These weren't just meals. They were edible acts of love. Bananas cut into thirds, sandwiches constructed with architectural precision. On Tuesday, a sticky note with a message. You got this today, babe. Love you. I rolled my eyes and tossed it in the trash. I wasn't here for someone else's mid-morning affection. I was here for the sandwich, stacked, sliced, and wrapped like a gift from the universe. I laughed, alone, chewing on someone else's dill pickle spear. The all-hands ultimatum. It began innocently enough, an all-hands meeting in the conference room. Hastily scheduled and suspiciously well catered. Bagels, coffee, a fruit tray nobody touched. Our director of operations took the floor, clearing her throat with the gravitas of someone about to announce layoffs or a fire drill. We need to talk, she said, pausing dramatically, about the sanctity of the lunch fridge. Gasps, murmurs. Somewhere, Steve flexed angrily. They led out the crimes like a Netflix true crime docuseries. Missing granola bars, phantom yogurts, sandwiches gone without a trace. A PowerPoint slide declared in bold Arial, "This is not a communal fridge." Dolores from accounting sat in the front row, arms crossed, nodding like a judge. There was a new sign taped to the refrigerator the next morning, all caps, red ink, threatening tone. Food thieves will be terminated. I read it, eating someone's leftover Chipotle, foil wrapped and full of promise. Was it wrong? Absolutely. But I didn't. I work harder than anyone else. Didn't I stay late? Debugging spaghetti code abandoned by developers who'd long since ghosted the company? Didn't I deserve a little kindness? That lunch was kindness wrapped in wax paper, so I took it, again and again. The thrill became ritual. I opened the fridge each morning like a kid tiptoeing down the stairs on Christmas. Every day was a culinary roulette. Roast beef with horseradish aioli, lemon couscous with grilled halloumi, sushi. Sushi! I ate it with the fridge still open, like a raccoon at a five-star buffet. The guilt dimmed, justification multiplied. It'll just get thrown out. I'm reducing waste. I'm basically an environmentalist. Then came the real temptation: client lunches, catered wraps, artisanal salads, sliders with truffle aioli, intended for VIPs, and glass walled conference rooms. Sometimes extras were left. Sometimes I didn't wait to find out. I timed coffee breaks to intercept the delivery guy, circled the perimeter like a wolf in a business casual, snatched trays under the goose of helping set up. I was no longer just a thief, I was a connoisseur, a lunchtime opportunist, a legend in my own mind. Enter Dolores from accounting, not management, not HR. Dolores. Quiet, cardigan clad, chronically underestimated. She labeled her yogurt. She brought in homemade granola. She made her own kombucha. And she watched. For 3 months, her kale quinoa lunches vanished without a trace. She filed no complaints, raised no alarms, but the silence was deceptive. Enough is enough, she said to no one in particular, as she packed her lunch one fateful morning. The trap was methodical. A pudding cup so delectantly rich it glistened under the break room lights, like a jewel of dairy-based temptation. A note, folded, with a familiar charm, its edges luring like a siren song. It was the kind of lunch treasure I couldn't resist. A holy grail of sweet, creamy opportunity. I thought I had been gaming the system, but Dolores was the system, and I never stood a chance. The pudding incident. I ate it around 11:45. By 12:15, I was sweating. By 12:30, pale. By 12:42, I was in the third stall on the fifth floor, regretting every decision I ever made. A full-scale gastrointestinal apocalypse. By 1 o'clock, the realization of what had happened struck me. In the aftermath, my pale face, trembling hands, and the unmistakable weight of consequence settling in my gut, alongside that cursed pudding, was clear to anyone who saw me. I had never felt so hollow, not from hunger, but from knowing I had crossed some invisible line that couldn't be uncrossed. The pudding had been a trap, yes, but it was also a mirror, and what I saw in that reflection was someone I didn't recognize. Regret swelled in my chest, sharp and unrelenting. Every stolen sandwich, every tossed note of affection, every quietly consumed kindness came back at once. A parade of small betrayals I could no longer laugh off. It wasn't the pudding that broke me. It was the realization that I had become everything I thought I was better than. I spotted Dolores near the water cooler as I staggered down the hall, hollow-eyed and claiming. She didn't gloat. She didn't sneer. She just looked at me with quiet resolve, like someone watching justice take its natural course. You always take the good one, she said, not unkindly. I figured you wouldn't be able to resist. HR called me at 2:30. There was no need for theatrics. I told them everything. The sandwiches, the notes, the catered lunches I've inhaled like a feral executive. I admitted to every stolen bite. I didn't cry, but I broke somewhere small and important inside. The moral, maybe? The job is gone. My reputation, compost. I'm probably a cautionary tale in onboarding slides now. But I learned something about decency, about restraint, about how sometimes the softest voice in the room is the one you should fear most. Maybe one day I'll forgive myself, but not yet. Not while I can still taste the betrayal. Man, what a story. And I do have to say, I don't feel any sort of remorse for this person, because if you have watched my previous videos, I believe the first video that I went and posted in this kind of content, we read a similar story, but it was somebody on the other side, somebody who kept getting their lunches stolen, and that, they couldn't do anything about it until they bought themselves a fridge and put it under the desk. And if I remember correctly, I do remember saying that I personally would have not bought in a fridge and put it under my desk. I would have made a lunch, one looking extremely good, and I would have put some kind of laxative in that. And you would know who would that be when they go to the bathroom and they're there for a long period of time. So, Dolores is my hero in this story. Dolores is the person that I think I would be, who I strive to be. Dolores is a badass, and Dolores may have not done the right thing, but Dolores did the best thing. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the next story. Alright, so this story is titled, "The Photos Were Taken While I Slept." I just graduated from college at the age of 20, and this is my first professional job. On the first day, I was given a used business laptop by IT. Although it was slightly worn and scratched. They claimed it had been cleared, so I didn't give it much thought. Everything appeared to be going well for the first several weeks. Then I saw something odd. One night, I heard the laptop's fan restart after I turned it off. After a few seconds, the screen momentarily flashed on before turning black once more. I assumed that it was simply outdated hardware and not cause for concern. I was too ignorant about computers to believe differently. But then last week, I was organizing files on my desktop when I found a hidden folder. It was labeled, "Do Not Open." So of course, I opened it. There were pictures within, dozens of them. Some were in my apartment, while others were from work. However, there were too many intimate ones, like the one when I was laying in bed, beneath the covers, and the other where I was cleaning my teeth. A picture of me taken inside my closet, as if someone had been hidden there while I was in the room. It was the next one that made my stomach plummet. These were not images from a camera. These were real pictures, taken from odd perspectives. The laptop doesn't even have a webcam. I phoned IT in a panic. After doing some inspections, they dismissed the idea that there was a webcam. I didn't chuckle in return. Something didn't feel right. I took it to a local computer technician the following day. After running some diagnostics, he gave me a pallid expression. "Back in 2017, this laptop was reported stolen," he stated. "Are you certain it belongs to you?" Confused, I nodded. He displayed something to me on the screen. GPS metadata was included in one of the pictures as I stared at it. I was grasping for air. The timestamp read tomorrow at 3:12, and it was a photo of me in bed. The problem? It wasn't my apartment. The furniture was different. The curtains, even the bed. And in the doorway, there was someone standing, watching me. That night, I hardly fell asleep at all. To feel safe, I stayed at a friend's house. But this evening, the photo shows me in the room. The bed, the curtains, and even the clock on the nightstand are all identical. Now it's 3:08 a.m., and behind me, I heard a creak on the floor. Alright, so that one was obviously a fake story, but I figured I'd go ahead and throw it in here just to read a few more. But yeah, very interesting. Well, you can go ahead and get started into the next one. Alright, this one is titled, "My Experience with Research Drugs." When I was 18, me and my mate Jay were buying pot from the local dealer. He offered us new drug that was in a piece of paper. He said it was super acid, and Jay, who was into psychedelics, bought us 2 hits. They looked like little 1 centimeter squares of paper. We went behind the train station by a river and ate the paper and smoked for around an hour before we started walking down the river, waiting for the drugs to kick in. I don't remember much of an effect until this man with a red ball cap came out of the bushes and asked what we were doing. His face looked extremely exaggerated and angular, and I felt like he was threatening me. I thought I turned around and ran, but I was standing there with Jay while he was talking to the guy. I started to freak out because it felt like everything I was doing, I was only doing in my head. Jay said the guy told us to leave, and we said we need to run. I thought the guy was threatening us, and Jay said he was a cop, so we ran up into a neighborhood. We were walking down the street, and I remember it felt like everyone was looking at me, staring into my soul. I thought I was seeing the evil inside of everyone, and it was terrifying. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see my shadow, and I thought it was moving differently than I was walking. There was this street light that had 3 lights on it, and I thought the lights had faces and were angry at me. We went to Jay's house after, and we were going to play GTA 5. When we got into his room, he said he needed to take a shower and disappeared into his bathroom. I was sitting in his room trying to figure out his Xbox, but it was foreign alien technology, basically. I tried turning it on by taking it off the shelf and sitting on it, and it was logical to me at the time. When that didn't work, I put a pillow on top of it, and it still didn't turn on. I could not even remember my name or what life was like before I took the drug. He ended up coming out of the shower like 3 hours later. I forgot I was waiting in his room. He put on Sausage Party, the stupid movie with the hot dogs, and it was just terrifying to me. I couldn't watch it. I turned around and looked at the wall the whole movie because the faces on the characters looked evil. When the sun rose, I walked home still awake. I stopped to get some bagels and coffee, but when I walked into the store, it was so bright and the cashier's face was terrifying. So I left the store and I realized I was so hungry. I went back in and the cashier looked at me weird. I ordered a cream cheese bagel and thought I ordered a coffee, but I got a bagel and orange juice. But I left because I couldn't remember if I ordered that or not. When I got home, I couldn't find my keys and thought I left them at Jay's. They were not in my pockets. I ended up getting in by climbing the second floor balcony with my juice and bagel in one hand, only to discover the keys in my front hoodie once I got inside. After eating, I spent the entire day cleaning my apartment. When I eventually got to sleep, I had been awake almost 48 hours and ended up sleeping for 18 hours. Today's lesson, don't do drugs. Yeah, I would definitely have to say that story was terrifying. And the fact that it more than likely probably happened. I've never done anything like that, like to that level. But yeah, definitely don't do drugs that, people just wrapped in a piece of paper. But yeah, these guys seem like they're from the UK, so I can only imagine they were doing some weird stuff, whatever they could get their hands on. But yeah, this is the end of the video, and I was gonna go ahead and say, if you guys enjoyed the different kind of stories that I read today, go ahead and like and subscribe. I know that my first video was about an hour long, but I think that I'm going to start shortening them up a bit. That way I can produce more of them in a quicker manner. So I'm going to kind of strive for, a 30-minute or so video. If you guys prefer longer content and you want the hour-long videos, then definitely just say, we want longer content, and I'll do that. But, I'm just now getting started out on YouTube, and I'm kind of just experimenting with certain kinds of videos. But yeah, if you guys liked it and enjoyed it, feel free to please leave a like and a comment. And yeah, see you guys.